When I say the name Hedy Lamarr, what comes to mind? For most of us, it's probably a glamorous star from Hollywood's golden age. And yeah, you'd be absolutely right. But that's only half the story. Because behind that famous face was the mind of an inventor. A mind that came up with a technology so far ahead of its time, it challenges everything we think we know about where great ideas really come from.
And this, right here, is the central conflict of Hedy Lamarr's whole life. On one side, you've got the Hollywood icon, literally billed as the world's most beautiful woman. And on the other, a diagram from her U.S. patent for a secret communication system. Publicly, she was all about glamour, but privately, she was wrestling with incredibly complex scientific ideas, a secret she kept hidden for most of her life.
You know, this wasn't just some secret hobby, it was a real burden for her. This quote, it just reveals her deep, deep frustration. Lamarr felt completely trapped by her own beauty. She once said that in her movies, all she was expected to do was stand still and look stupid. She knew she was brilliant, but it felt like the world only wanted to see her face. Her early life was, as dramatic as any movie script. She was born in Vienna, got famous in a pretty scandalous film called Ecstasy. But here's the really crucial part of her backstory, her first marriage. She married a wealthy Austrian arms dealer, and while she was basically his prisoner in their castle, she was also forced to sit in on his business meetings. And what was he discussing? Advanced weaponry, military tech, all of it. So when she finally escaped, she didn't just bring her Hollywood ambitions with her, she brought a secret education in applied science. So, World War II breaks out. Lamarr is now a huge star, but she is absolutely determined to help the Allies. She hated the Nazis. She'd escaped their influence in Austria, and she knew that her unique knowledge could actually be a weapon.
And she zeroed in on a very specific problem. See, the Allies were using these new radio-controlled torpedoes. The trouble was, the Germans could easily find the single radio frequency that was guiding the torpedo, jam it with interference, and poof, the torpedo would just veer off, completely useless. Lamarr had actually overheard conversations about this exact issue at her ex-husband's dinner parties. She knew a solution was needed and fast.
Now, she didn't do this alone. At a dinner party, of all places, she found the most unlikely creative partner, George Antheil. He was an experimental composer, kind of known as the bad boy of music. His whole thing was synchronizing multiple-player pianos for his wild compositions. So Lamarr brought the military problem, Antheil brought the mechanical know-how, and right there, they supposedly sketched out their initial idea on a cocktail napkin.
And their idea was brilliant, because it was so simple. Okay, picture a player piano roll, with all the little punched-out holes. Lamarr and Antheil thought, what if you put identical, perfectly synchronized piano rolls in both the torpedo and the ship controlling it? Those rolls could tell the radio signal to hop from one frequency to another in a pattern that seemed random to outsiders. So an enemy trying to jam it would just catch a tiny blip of static before the signal hopped somewhere else entirely. It was basically unjammable. Just ingenious.
It's an incredible story, right? The Hollywood bombshell who invents the technology that leads to Wi-Fi. It's a legend that's become a huge part of our culture. But if we dig a little deeper into the actual patent documents, a much more complex, and honestly, a much more interesting story starts to unfold.
Okay, to really get what happens next, we have to talk about this thing in patent law called prior art. It's a pretty simple rule, really. You can't get a patent for an idea that someone else has already documented. The whole job of the patent office is to act like a detective and find any prior art out there to make sure an invention is truly new.
So, when Lamarr and Antheil filed their patent, they made 7 different claims. Now, the first 6 were super specific. They described their player piano-like device in detail. But then there was claim 7, and that was the big one. It was this broad, sweeping claim for the entire method of secret communication by changing frequencies at the same time. In essence, they were trying to patent the very concept of frequency hopping itself.
And here's the twist. The patent examiner rejected Claim 7. Why? Prior art. Turns out, a 1929 patent by a man named Willem Broertjes had already described a secret communications system where the transmitter and receiver's tuning was modified in synchronism. Look at the language. It's almost identical. The core idea of what we now call frequency hopping spread spectrum, or FHSS, already existed. It wasn't new. So this rejected ghost claim, as some people call it, is really the key to understanding what they actually contributed. It forces us to separate the popular legend from what the historical record actually shows.
And the crucial takeaway is this. Hedy Lamarr and George Antheil did not invent frequency hopping. What they invented was a new apparatus, a really creative player piano-like mechanism to make it happen. Their patent was for a new machine, not a new scientific principle, a mechanism, not the method.
Let's just break down what the hard evidence shows. The U.S. Patent Office rejected their claim to the method. Their own lawyer agreed and canceled that claim. The patent they did get was for the 6 claims describing their mechanical device. In fact, no one ever actually built a system using their specific paper strip invention. The U.S. Navy looked at it during the war and basically said it was too bulky to put inside a torpedo at the time.
So does knowing all this diminish her story? I say not at all. In fact, I think understanding the nuance makes her legacy even more remarkable. It just shifts the focus from a single eureka moment to what her true, and maybe even more powerful, impact really was.
Her patent wasn't just forgotten in a drawer. In the 1950s, engineers developing a submarine detection system called the Sonobuoy directly used her patent as inspiration. Beyond that, her story has become this incredible symbol, shining a huge spotlight on the barriers women have always faced in science and tech. And look, she championed an idea that, while not totally original, would eventually become the foundational principle for the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS that we all use every single day.
So decades after she filed that patent, the world finally started to catch up. When she was recognized for her work in 1997, her response was just perfect. After a whole lifetime of being underestimated, of having her brain completely overshadowed by her beauty, she knew this recognition was long overdue.
So what is Hedy Lamarr's ultimate legacy then? Well, her story shows us that innovation isn't always some clean eureka moment from a lone genius. More often than not, it's a messy, interconnected process.
And this leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. Lamarr took a known concept, she applied it to a critical problem, and she designed a brand new, creative way to solve it, and her work then went on to inspire others. So what really matters more? The absolute first-in-the-world originality of an idea, or the vision to see its potential in a new and powerful way? That is the complex and truly surprising legacy of Hedy Lamarr.